and welcome to another super selection of terrible tales from the Sinful Radio 2 Drive Time listeners. Thank you for being patient. It's our first one back after the summer break. If you've been up to bad stuff, turn it into a confession and send it on an email. Details to come. This week's concise collection include a peculiar parenting pair, some tricky train travel, a famous face faux pas, and hospital hat hilarity. Here it all comes. Dear Father Simon and the Forgiving Few, I seek forgiveness for an incident that happened about 10 years ago when my son, who we shall call Josh, was in his second year at the local secondary. To set the scene, the school was an excellent one, but serving what would be politely described as a challenging catchment area. My son was a very quiet child, whose one desire was to keep his head down, go unnoticed, and get home at the end of the day with both his pocket money and his face intact. One way to do this was to blend into the furniture, keep to his small group of equally quiet friends, and avoid drawing attention of either teachers or some of his fellow students who were keen on sharing the contents of his lunchbox or using his pencil case as a netball. All was going very well until halfway through the spring term of his second year, when Josh arrived home with the dreaded letter that sends shivers down the spine of any parents of children at secondary school. Notification of a parents' evening. Now, as we mentioned before in this programme, one of the great joys of doing the show is that we never get to go to parents' evenings because we're always at work. Sorry, can't do it. Now, for those listeners, says Amelia, who have children in primary school and only have primary school experience, brace yourself. Secondary school parents' evenings are nothing like this. For a start, they go on for hours. There seems to be a never-ending stream of different teachers to see, most of whom would clearly rather be at home sticking pins in their eyes than talking to you. But worst of all, the arrangement of appointment times to see those poor tormented souls is left entirely up to the pupils to sort. This involves the pupil going to each teacher in turn with an appointment card and asking them for a time that they're free, which seems like a ridiculous way of organising things. Is that what matches with your experience?
Yeah, that does with
really?
Mine. Yeah. What a joke. Yeah. Anyway, go on.
Why do you look outraged there, Bobby?
Well, no, I was just thinking, I can't see how it would work. It seems like a lot of work.
You'd be right to think that. Yeah.
Can't you just do it online, like working a delivery slot?
Yeah, maybe that's an idea for them to take on board.
All right, okay. So the previous, so this involves the people going to each teacher in turn with an appointment card and asking them for a time that they're free. The previous year, our first appointment had been 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Our final one at 10 to 9 in the evening. So this year I was determined it would be different. Make sure, I said to him, that you get in first with your appointment card and that the appointments are all close together. And I trained him on how to do stealth attacks on teachers as they come out of their hiding from the staff room or they ran for cover from the cars, and how to jump them and say, "Can I have one at 4 o'clock, please?" A few days later, with a triumphant beam on his face, Josh presented me with his appointment card. Imagine my delight when I saw it filled with all 12 or so appointments, all within a space of 2.5 hours. Well, a result, kind of. Although I thought about that and then I looked at it more closely, it turned out that this year, the parents' evening was split between the main hall and the science labs, a good 5 minutes apart, and the appointments were all next to each other, with no time to get between the two. Not to worry, I say to Josh, trying very hard not to show how annoyed I was. I think you're a little harsh, Amelia. He's doing his best. I'll go to the ones in the main hall. Your dad can go and do the ones in the science and the maths areas. This is a logical solution to the problem. Well, the evening came. It was just as well my husband and I had divided the appointments between us. Even though some of the appointments were rather tedious, art, geography, music, I'm looking at you, some of the teachers spent at least 9 of the 10 minutes trying to remember which one my son was. Others of the appointments overran, and so it was I arrived at my final appointment with my son's form tutor slightly late and somewhat flustered, and I plonked myself down on the chair. As we had met the form tutor before on a couple of occasions and didn't anticipate any problems, I finally relaxed. The conversation went something like this. "Are you alone, Mrs. Smith?" Because the tutor had a kind of a...
Yeah? Had a what?
had a ridiculous speaking voice.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
"Are you alone, Mrs. Smith?" the tutor says, hardly raising her face from the notes. "Your husband not with you tonight?"
Ooh. Hello.
"No," I replied. "We've split up."
What?
The tutor raised her head and looked at me attentively. I'm sorry to hear that. She said, oh, don't be, I says. It was the only way we could manage it, really.
Oh, right.
And how does Josh feel about this? Strange question, I thought. But then the image of the worried look on his face came to mind. Well, he's not exactly happy about it, but then actually it's all his fault. If he'd been a bit more organised, then we'd both be here talking to you now instead of just me. I was rather exasperated. The tutor looked at me, compassionate face on, very odd look really, and then started writing rapidly in her notebook. There was an uncomfortable pause. Then the former tutor started talking about Josh's overall progress, and the rest of the appointment passed without note. It wasn't until a bit later in the evening, when my husband and I were conferring about our different meetings, I relayed my strange conversation with the former tutor. It occurred to me that I may have perhaps given the wrong impression, but I shrugged it off. What would it matter if she got the wrong end of the stick? Anyway, nothing would come of it. That is until a few days later, when a rather disgruntled teenager came home complaining he'd been taken out of one of his lessons by the head of pastoral care to join the Diamond Group, in which he and a number of boys had been encouraged to share their feelings. Okay. Rather wary, he declined this invitation and kept his mouth firmly shut. After all, he said to me he wasn't quite sure which of his feelings he was supposed to be admitting to, especially given the composition of this group. It was at this point, Father Simon, I should have contacted the school and put everything straight, but in truth I was just too embarrassed, so I said nothing. Eventually, after 3 painful weeks of trying to make Josh bare his soul in the Diamond Group, the head of pastoral care finally gave up and let him go back to his normal timetable. So I seek forgiveness not from my son, who's experienced many worse embarrassments caused by my big mouth over the years and always thankfully forgiven me, nor from his old form tutor, who quite frankly passed the buck on this, but to the extremely nice head of pastoral care, who tried her hardest to counsel a child she thought burdened with the guilt of destroying his parents' marriage, but was met with a complete wall of silence. I hope she had more success with the others in the group. Anyway, Amelia, thank you very much indeed. Yeah, an easy mistake to make. They were just being efficient and splitting up, but not that kind of splitting up, so teacher gets it completely wrong. It's a parents' evening confession. We'll take more, but first of all, we'll check in with Sister Bobby from the Priory.
You know, if you go into your child's school and the teacher doesn't know which one of your child is,
yes,
isn't that a good thing? Because it means they're not in trouble. Even though if they're not, top of the class, it means they're not causing any problems.
They're somewhere in the middle, I suppose, yes.
Yeah, that's a good thing. And of course, what you could do next time is wear a T-shirt with your child's face on it, so you would know that's my child.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah.
I love this. I'm only slightly disappointed it wasn't a product of forethought and she thought, oh, I know what I'm going to do here, and really kind of making a big thing, because that would have been brilliantly mischievous and I'd have loved that.
I like the idea of having a T-shirt. I'm his
Remember
mother.
this one?
So actually, it's the only thing I felt a little bit sorry for was Josh going to the, being forced to go to the Diamond Club, but at least it existed. At least there was pastoral care. There's a thought. It didn't happen
Is
in my
there something
day.
you want to tell us, Josh? No, there isn't.
No.
Thanks.
Lovely. Of course, Amelia, from the West Country, you're absolutely forgiven.
Checking in here with Brother Matt.
What I've never understood, because I've had to go through this as well with the parents' evening, and everyone gets a 5-minute slot, and I've never understood. You're asking a lot of organisation from a 12-year-old, 13-year-old kid to be able to say, right, do that, and then probably leave a 5-minute gap so that we can get to the next one, and then you always end up with just getting art at 5 o'clock and then nothing else till 8:45 when it's drama. So
There's
what do you
the RE teacher. No one's bothered to go and see them.
Absolutely. So what you end up doing is going to see people out of sync anyway. I love this story just because it rings true for me, but also because they decided to call this the Diamond Group, which it sort of sounds like an executive lounge as an airline. It's not very good, really. Talk about your feelings, no thanks. Can I go back, please? Anything but this. So I'm going to forgive.
Dear Simon and the Drive Time Collective, dear Simon and dear Collective, back in 1985, when I was 19, I used to travel up to Sheffield to spend the weekend with my boyfriend, who was at university there. We used to take turns to visit each other, and when it was my turn, I would travel up by train on a Friday evening from Colchester, straight from work. You know that feeling. Travel on the Friday, it was exciting. A whole weekend of wonderful possibilities lying ahead. Travel home on the Sunday night, or worse, Monday morning, filled with gloom. Anyway, this story takes place on a Friday, and all is well. By the time I arrived in London to pick up my connection to Sheffield, all the seats would invariably be taken. Imagine that happening now.
I can't.
It'd be an outrage. Indeed, the trains were so crowded that every inch of floor space would also be taken, with standing passengers crammed in like sweltering sardines. Seats taken, aisles taken, areas in between the carriages where you go to make a call if you're considerate also taken. Not that anyone made calls in 1985, obviously. Or you could just sort of sit down, even if there is space elsewhere. You could have just sit down in that bit there, can't you?
Yes.
Apparently you can do that. Okay. There was this one particular uncomfortable journey when, feeling tired and bursting for the loo, I actually found myself backed into one of the train's toilets with 3 men, as there was literally nowhere else to stand. I realised that at this point, Matt might say, "Oh, I say."
Wow.
But that's actually what happened.
Okay.
However, that's not my confession, though it sounds like one.
It does.
My confession relates to one of these ridiculously full train journeys. On the day in question, I was feeling particularly exhausted after a long week at work and several late nights. Huge waves of tiredness kept sweeping over me, and becoming increasingly desperate, I asked a kindly-looking man if he would allow me to perch on the arm of his seat. To my intense relief, he agreed. And that was it. I don't really remember much after that, except that I woke up more than an hour later, coming round slowly. As I opened my bleary eyes, for some reason, the whole carriage was cheering and clapping. I then realised that I was sitting in this man's lap, with my arms wrapped around him, my head snuggled up to his chest.
Oh, lovely.
And apparently I was calling him Jason.
What?
OMG, you have to be kidding me, in capital letters. Everyone thought it was hilarious. I, of course, was mortified. I'd spent an hour wrapped around a stranger. All he had done is said I could sit on the arm, not in his lap. The expression on that poor man's face has haunted me for the last 31 years, as has the memory of him rubbing his legs to try and get the circulation back. As I extracted myself from the worst situation ever. You can imagine if someone's sitting on your lap for an hour.
Oh, dear.
But how polite was he not? Anyway, maybe it was fun. I still carry the guilt, Father Simon. A couple of years ago on the train back from London, a man fell asleep on me and left a big patch of dribble on my shoulder. I view this as karma. Please free me from this guilt and pass on my apologies to the poor man I crushed and innocently molested. I do hope he managed to get his legs working again. Sincere thanks from Linda Isaac. That's what we're calling it. Maybe that actually is what she is. Which is just a fantastic story. And I would think maybe he's thinking, well, I'm not going to disturb because you'll wake up again in like a minute or something like that. And then... No, then the arms wrapped around his neck and so on, head in the chest. Very nice. Thank you very much indeed, Sister Bobby. What are you saying there?
I've done this so many times, falling asleep, but usually, with your head nodding forward and banging your head against the glass. Never as glamorous and romantic as this, I have to say.
Lap.
It's a lovely story. Yeah. What's great is the entertainment for the rest of the carriage. Let's face it.
They were clearly watching then. They saw everything that happened.
So what I say, Linda, is you entertained about 500 people all squashed into a 23-seater carriage, and that's not a bad thing. So you don't need forgiveness, because that whole crowd absolutely loved it. And it seems like he wasn't bothered either, really.
Because he could always have, if he was really not enjoying it, he could have just said, "Oi,
get off my lap."
Yes.
Get off my lap.
Still ironing, you could have said.
Yeah.
You're forgiven, Linda. You don't really need it, though.
Brother Matthew.
I love the fact that this probably happened in stages, didn't it? She probably first ends up on his lap, and he's thinking, right, okay, I'm going to have to... As long as she doesn't put her arms around my neck, oh no, that's done. Well, as long as she doesn't snuggle into my neck, oh no, that's happening. And then it's at what point do you draw the line? Oh, I'll draw the line now? Oh, please wake up. It's so British. I'm not going to say anything, because you might get angry, but could you not be snuggling in?
Maybe
their eyes then met and thought, wow, what is this that's spark between us? But probably not, because of the dribble. So I am going, and the dead legs. So I am going to forgive, because we probably all in that situation would have done the same. I know I would.
Put your arms around a stranger.
Probably not that
call
big.
Him Jason.
Probably not call him Jason.
Father Mayo and the Forgiving Collective, but I have to say Matt won't forgive this one.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Good. I like those.
Do you feel challenged?
Yeah.
For my confession, I need to go back to the 90s. I was in my early 20s, and to be honest, a bit of a 70s throwback with long hair, jeans, and I spent most of my time wearing an old Quo t-shirt. That's not a bad...
Nothing wrong so far.
Nothing wrong so far indeed. There's the picture. I lived in a village not far from the newly opened M40. We see we're nodding at Bobby's direction as well. It's got a little bit of an M40 reference in there. Because I know you like a little
live and
motorway.
breathe roads.
A little bit of a motorway reference.
Actually,
and the
I
road
do-
signs we've been talking about, which is talking about the M40.
Wow.
The landlord of the local pub decided to take advantage of the new motorway being so close by. He put some signage. He's got road signs in his cafe.
This is
It's
amazing.
extraordinary. He put some signage on the side of the motorway advising weary travellers that there was a friendly local not far away. This was before the local services were even open, so it was fair to say the pub got busy with non-locals. Can you actually put a sign by the motorway? Maybe in those different times.
Yeah,
Such a long time ago.
Yeah.
So this is before
condone
8
that.
so somewhere between 8 and 10, I reckon.
What, 9?
Because that's where the two services are.
Okay. Somewhere, we've narrowed it down very nicely, thank you. I used to frequent a said pub most nights, and on the night in question, went there to meet a few mates. We all stood at the bar when I decided to put a few tunes on the jukebox. Back in those days, the choice of rock songs on the jukebox was, I have to say, very limited. But for your £1, you got 10 plays, and I would rootle through some old rock tracks, the very few that there were, sometimes playing the same track twice. My first song started to play, and a voice from the table behind me said, "Good choice, mate," in a Birmingham accent. Oh. Good choice, mate.
Oh dear.
Where's that?
Yeah. I'm not sure.
I replied, "Oh, thanks, mate. Where are you guys from, then?" "Birmingham," is the reply. "Well, what brings you here?" I say. "Well, we've just done a gig in London and we're on our way back, and we saw a sign, so we decided to stop for a drink." "Oh, cool," I said. They told me their name, and they'd been together for a while, and we discussed music and beer and pubs and small talk. I then returned to the bar where my friend, let's call him Gordon, that was his name, was sat with his head in his hands. I said to him, "They're a band, Gordon." Gordon says,
Yeah.
"I know that." "They're from Birmingham,"
Yeah.
I said. "I know that too," says Gordon. I'm now picking up on his general tone of despair. "Do you know them?" I say. "Yes, Dave, I do." "They got some weird name, I can't remember it." "Was it by any chance Judas Priest?"
Oh, I say.
says
Wow.
Gordon. "Oh, yeah, that's right," I
Yeah.
said. Gordon says, "What did you say when they said their name was Judas Priest?" I said, "I'd never heard of them."
No, good. Good, excellent.
In
Well
your
done.
rock T-shirt, in your status quo T-shirt, you old rocker. The rest of his comments, Father Simon, are not broadcastable. The lads from the band, Judas Priest,
Yeah.
left the pub shortly afterwards, and I've never been able to live down the shame of not having a clue who they were. I now know that they've sold 45 million albums,
Yep.
and MTV have rated them the second greatest metal band of all time. Oops. Father Simon, don't seek forgiveness from the band, as it was that long ago that they've probably forgotten about it now. But from my friend, who I totally managed to shame with my ignorance, he still bears the scars. I also seek forgiveness from the collective for being a total numpty, even though I know Matt is going to be harsh with this one. As a softener for Matt, I once bumped into all the members of Westlife in the toilets at Leicester City, and I didn't have a clue who they were either.
Good.
Waiting
Well
in
done.
anticipation for your
Yeah.
kind words of forgiveness, Father Simon. Yours sincerely, Dave. Well, you know, I don't know. This is quite an interesting one. I feel slightly conflicted about it because when I was at Radio 1, it had been arranged for Naomi Campbell to bring me a birthday cake, and she came in and I didn't recognise her, and there was then a fairly tortuous 5 minutes while I just said, "Oh, thanks," and she said,
So you knew Naomi Campbell was coming in?
"No, I didn't."
Oh, right.
It was a surprise.
It was just somebody came in and
It was a
turns out
surprise
it's a
on my
massive
birthday.
supermodel. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you went,
And I
thanks for the
wasn't-
cake.
I just wasn't entirely sure.
You weren't entirely
What,
sure it
of
was
your
Naomi
birthday?
Campbell.
Yes, I knew it was my birthday. Anyway,
checking.
so if you're in a anyway if you've got a rock T-shirt on, I think you should probably think Judas Priest. Yes, I know who you are.
Yeah.
Anyway, Sister Bobby, what do you think?
I think this is actually quite the opposite. I don't think Judas Priest minded they didn't know who he was. That's the thing. Were they offended? And I don't think they were. And also, there are lots of people. If you're really, really famous, I think it's actually a breath of fresh air when people don't know who you are or mistake you for someone else. That's even much more playful.
Aren't
And
you
can play on
Uriah
that-
Heep?
Well, the thing is, he didn't mistake them from someone else. He genuinely didn't know, and that's fine. We only know what we know, don't we? And I think it's all right not to know things or not to know people. And Judas Priest seemed completely unaffected by it, and it didn't affect their record sales, did it?
No,
or their
they
following?
did very well.
So really, no harm done, except for his mate, who had his Dave's mate. What was Dave's mate
Gordon.
called?
He was Gordon.
Yeah, Gordon had his head in his hands. So Gordon was the only one that suffered the shame there. And shame on Gordon for not going up and kind of, I don't know, getting gig tickets, doing something. I need to point out something. I said services were between 8 and 10.
Yeah,
There's also some at Warwick services, but I just thought they came from Birmingham.
That's what I thought.
You wouldn't stop at Birmingham for a drink because you're nearly home then.
Unnecessary detail.
And the pub will be closed by then.
Closed.
So it's definitely between 8 and 10.
Anyway.
8 and 10.
Anyway,
Definitely.
forgive him.
Thanks for clearing. Would you recognise the priest if you bumped into them?
The priest,
Yes.
absolutely, yeah.
Would you confuse the priest for the heap?
Well, here's a no, you wouldn't. Different. Anyway, what I would say here is obviously there are going to be some times where you run into famous people and you don't know who they are, and that's fine. But I think once they say, we are Judas Priest, at that point you do need to engage your bluff, don't you?
Yeah.
You go, oh, yes, of course. Well, I know you're Judas Priest,
Obviously.
of course.
Oh, Judas Priest.
Judas Priest. So you need to do that. You need to engage that, I think, because otherwise, and also Judas Priest, their reputation is very much they are a very down to earth metal band, and you can talk to them in pubs, as this anecdote tells us.
I just want to throw that back to you.
Yes.
If you walked into the toilets and all of Westlife were there, and you didn't know it was Westlife,
It's like the moral maze.
It
and you
is.
said it was Westlife, right? And then you'd engage your bluff and go, "Oh yeah, Westlife," and they say to you, "So, which is your favourite album?"
Well, then that would show Westlife that they weren't the nicest boy band ever, because you don't then call someone on their bluff. You can probably tell when someone's bluffing.
Okay.
So that's my point. So, and if Westlife did happen to be in the toilet, it would be very surprising because our toilet's very small.
Are they often in the toilets at Leicester City? Would you
Are
think?
they? That's great news.
They've come down.
Yes. So I'm forgiving.
This is the one that completes the set for today from David in Lancashire. David, thank you very much indeed. Fathers as D-A-V-I-D. There for you, Bobs. Father Simon and the Forgiving Forgivers. My situation happened in 1980 when I was 20 and I was studying for a chemistry degree on a day release basis paid for by my employers. As such, I was revising for an exam the following day in the early evening when there came a knock at the door. It was my mate, and he said that the local football team, the one I played for on an occasional basis, was short of a fullback for the match that night. I thought I was pretty much all over my physical chemistry and I'd got it sussed. I had the revision everywhere, I had the post-it notes, I had the whole thing sorted. I thought this would be quite good at a bit of physical exertion. I went to get my boots. What could possibly go wrong? What do you think's going to go wrong?
I've not. This all sounds fine so far.
What do you think's going to go
brilliant.
wrong?
I don't know, Simon.
Okay.
Let it all unfold.
Paragraph 2. Halfway through the first half, there was an audible twang from my knee and instant agony. Here comes the worst advice you're about to hear. Our manager advised me to walk it off.
Oh, that's fine. Yeah, that's fine.
I mean, I was going to say different times. But in 1980, I think we all knew that you don't walk off that kind of thing. Anyway, says David, I limped the mile home and slept on it. No one gave him a lift home.
What?
In the morning, my knee was... They didn't have buses
No.
or taxis or friends or mates with cars then.
Different times, yeah.
In the morning, my knee was the size of a grapefruit
Oh.
and I could not bend my leg. So, now, what do you think he does?
Goes to work.
Yeah, takes the exam, obviously.
Well, no, he says... He gets to the local A&E, but he walks there.
He walks to A&E.
I managed to hobble to the local A&E where x-rays and so on were done, and it was decided to operate and I'd need to stay in and I'd miss the exam. But the amazing thing is he walks back from the football and then he walks to the hospital.
Fabulous.
Is it like 1880 rather than 1980? I was put in a room with a gown and one of those hats that doctors wear. I took my clothes off and put the gown and hat on. A young lady doctor, not much older than me to be honest, came in to write on my leg with a felt tip pen. She threw my gown back and said, "Oh, you didn't bother with the pants then?"
Right.
Father Simon, I still go hot and cold when I think of this moment as I'm sat there, essentially naked, with some paper underpants on my head.
What?
Well,
On the head?
because he had the hat on. Did you know?
Oh, it's the hat! I've only got it now.
Yes, it's the gown and the hat. So he looks, oh, it's a hat. I'm going to put it on and I'm going to... No, David, they're those paper pants from hospital that everybody likes wearing so much. They might not look good on your groin, but they look even worse on your head. Anyway, I eventually passed the exam and had to spend my 21st in plaster. Sadly, my football career was over. But obviously, this is fairly obvious. I seek forgiveness from my family, employer and college. All pretty much said, "You idiot, what were you thinking?" The lovely doctor, who I'm sure has seen worse, or possibly better. I'd also like to apologise to Ron Greenwood and all the England fans at the 1982 World Cup, as I had not been injured by my climb from the old Ermstonians third team to the England squad. It would have been meteoric if I hadn't got injured, and World Cup success would have been assured. I also seek redemption from the Nobel Chemistry Prize people, because if my education hadn't been interrupted, I would surely have invented graphene or something like that, says David. But essentially, the ridiculousness is confusing pants for a hat. I think the clue is in the 2 holes.
Yeah.
Or 3 holes. Or 4 holes, really. But anyway.
4? Have you got a tail?
Some people call it... It's the front tail.
Anyway.
Anyway.
See that producer over there?
Yeah.
She got head in hand. She has.
Yeah.
Anyway. So David in Lancashire. Yes. Sister Bobby.
Can you do him first, please?
Okay. Brother Matthew.
Yes, I'm going to say. Well, the beauty of this, obviously, is that
He's got pants on his
is the pants. But the idea that you would go in and say, well, obviously these I put on my head, because I've seen many things on telly of people in hospital with something on their head. I've never seen anyone with anything on their head in any hospital.
If you're
ever.
operating, you would put something on your head to keep your hair out of the operating. But
Would you?
Not if you're a patient.
Oh, if you're actually doing the surgery,
Yes,
yes.
not if you're a patient.
Not if you're a patient. So I love the fact that he decided to put them on his head. Good for him. So obviously forgiven, because it's given us a big laugh towards the end of the week. So well done. So yes, David, definitely forgiven.
Adam Porter is crying and has got 30 minutes to compose himself. Bobby Pryor.
I'm not sure.
Is it a tail?
Oh dear.
I'm not sure that David didn't know.
What do you think he put?
I just did it for a jest. I did it for a jest. Wasn't expecting the lovely young, maybe doctor, nurse to come in. Maybe thought it'd be a bit of a laugh. I don't know. It's one of those things. Maybe I had a great sense of humour. One thing I was going to say about him walking to A&E, though, you see, we're all programmed not only to go there in an absolute emergency, isn't it? And of course, what is an emergency? If he could walk, he could get there. And he thought, right, you know what? I'm stoic. I'm not going to use an ambulance.
I'm an idiot.
I'm going to get there. Well, yeah, we've all done it, haven't we? David, you're forgiven.
Well, they were this week's confessions. I hope you enjoyed at least one of them. And maybe it provoked a thought in the darkness of your hideous soul. Anyway, confessions at bbc.co.uk if a story occurs. And don't forget, all the best stuff is on the iPlayer. Anything for the last 30 days. The Radio 2 Book Club opened its doors to Kate Eberlin, who was talking about her new book, which is called Miss You. That was on Monday's show. On Tuesday, yes, it was another magnificent one which we played on Tuesday for you. Actor Matthew Lewis was in on Wednesday to talk about Ripper Street, his new play Unfaithful, he being Neville Longbottom from Harry Potter. There may well come a day when he doesn't have to be referred to as Neville Longbottom from Harry Potter, but that day is not here. Not yet. And on Thursday, Foodie Thursday, Bake Off's Chetna Mackin was back, serving up, and I quote, coriander chicken parcels. Details can be found on the Radio 2 website. Just head for Thursday's episode page, toggle down until you hit the recipe, hours of entertainment there. And if you've got this far into the podcast, thank you for being persistent. And also tweet me saying poppadoms and mango chutney. Thank you so much.